Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a Friday night slate here that's got a bunch of pretty good matchups after a small Thursday night slate in the NBA. In this one, we're taking a look at the Rockets, who are visiting the Portland TrailBlazers, who will be Dame Lillard-less for at least a week or so. Not fun to see, as he's had a great start to the season, but we still think that there's plenty of value in this one that we'll be taking a look at. I want you to make sure to like and subscribe to that page as well, so you can go ahead and continue to follow along with us as we bring you a couple game videos and our player props video that we are wicked hot for are on right now, 13-2 over our last 3 nights with those player props. So make sure you check those out as well, and head to thelines.com. That's where we have all our great written content for you guys about everything we're talking about here and more. Also have our great odds finder tool where you can go ahead and make sure to shop those NBA lines and player props across US sportsbooks, such as the lines that we have for this evening. Nate, let's jump into those and get into Rockets Blazers.
Yeah, nice big slate. We got a couple more of these home sets that the NBA has been rolling out here early, including Atlanta at Detroit. +6 are the Pistons at home. Hornets -2.5 at Magic. The Cavs +5.5 at the Celtics. Couple of good 3-1 teams there. Pacers are down to +5 at the Wizards. That was 6.5 a minute ago. Sixers are +1.5 at Toronto after losing to them 2 nights ago. The Knicks +7 at the Bucks. We do cover that game in a separate video for you guys. The 0-4 Lakers +8.5 at the love to stick it to them Timberwolves. The Bulls -4.5 at Spurs. Jazz +8 at Nuggets. They blew out Denver in their opener, so we'll see what happens in that rematch. The Pelicans +7 at the Suns, and then we get to this game. Yeah, it was +4.5 at the opener. Now +5.5 is Houston, and the totals dropped to 225 from 226 as bettors are kind of evaluating how to treat this game without Damian Lillard. It's strange with Houston. I mean, I guess I'll start with them, that they just are dead last in fast break points this year. They were kind of an over machine last year. They still don't defend anybody, and they're still 8th in pace, but they haven't been scoring enough in this limited sample size. Other teams are getting back in transition and guarding them, and that's why they're 1-4, and they've really only been competitive against Utah, which was tired after their nice 3-0 start. So yeah, I still look at Houston as an absolute doormat here. I mean, as one of the worst teams in the league that's sinking to the bottom intentionally. And last year they didn't do much as underdogs, 30-43 against the spread with an average margin of victory -10.5. So I am on Portland here. I mean, this is a classic stars out, bets up situation for us. You see it all the time in the NBA. We just saw it with the Pelicans beating the Mavs on Tuesday, et cetera, et cetera. This is the first game without Dame. The Blazers were obviously without Dame almost the entire season last year, but they were also without a ton of other guys. And even before they went into full tank, where they lost 2 late ones against the Rockets, where Trenton Watford might have been the best guy in the lineup there for the Blazers in those games.
Remember that.
They crushed the Rockets 125-110. Mr. Anthony Simons leading the way. He went for 27 and 6 dimes, shot 11 of 17 from the floor. And, that was kind of part of his coming out party. Since January, without Dame, averaged nearly 23 points per game with a 112 offensive rating. He's fully capable of picking up the slack here. I mean, he one of the best step back 3-pointers in the game at this point. Just an absolute electric package. And the biggest thing for the Blazers is what they did to upgrade on the wing. I mean, it wasn't a fluke that they started 4-0. And not necessarily with Dame just totally taking over, although he had some big games in there. It's what Jeremy Grant, Josh Hart, even guys like Nasir Little and Shaedon Sharpe off the bench have been able to bring to the table. And Nurk putting up a 106 individual defensive rating as well. They're number 1 in both free throws attempted and allowed, just controlling the paint. That was the biggest bugaboo for Nurk, is that he would get into foul trouble. He's protecting the rim without fouling. And Houston right now, they're 26th in offensive rating. I don't know where they're going to reliably get their points. They're 29th inside the arc. So if they're not going to hit you with a barrage of threes, they probably can't hang in this game. And Portland has taken care of business against them. Aside, again, throwing out those 2 tank games, won 7 of their previous 8 and covered in 6 of those against the Rockets.
Yeah, man. This isn't last year's Portland TrailBlazers, however you want to phrase that. And Jeremy Grant's a huge part of that. He hasn't gotten the usage rate. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him on offense without Dame, but we know what we're going to get from Anthony Simons on offense without Dame. Even this year when he's been playing with Dame, averaging, by the way, still the most minutes on the team, or second most basically to Josh Hart, Anthony Simons. But that's because Josh Hart is like the actual perfect player to play off of a guy like Dame and to play in a lineup with a 4 like Jeremy Grant and a big like Nurk. So he's going to continue to get those starters minutes, but the usage rate for Simons on the court with all these guys is still 24%, right? With a ton of guys that Dame likes to play with and play, and pass the ball to. But when you're playing with Dame and his usage is at 33%, it's where you want it, because they've told us they're not trying to lose this season. So my main point is, like, I really just love those player props. I love the 5.5 too. I want to talk about a total, and I want to talk about an over, but I like the defense that Portland has shown, just because last year couldn't get any worse, right? They couldn't have been any more of a turnstile from giving up 3-pointers to allowing guys to get to the rim, right? And that's the modern day NBA. You can't guard either of those places. That's fine. There's like 4 teams trying to shoot mid-range jumpers, right? And it's whichever team KD is on, whichever team DeMar DeRozan is on. So, there's and Chris Paul. So there's plenty of other ways, I think, to for Portland to score this year, sorry, what I mean to say is a lot of ways for them to stop other players from other teams from scoring. Nurk has been staying in the game. You talk about his individual defensive rating being, so good, like with 106 or so, which is incredible for a guy who, when he was on the floor, his defensive rating individually wasn't always too bad. He would definitely get beat up because there aren't that many true centers that would, that he could stay on the floor and actually guard. And when he did, they were good enough to beat the crap out of him, like Embiid and Jokic. But this year he's not fouling. He's staying on the court, and I do think it says something that you finally have another guy that's Jeremy Grant, that's like 6'10", who's putting up his own. Look, he's putting up about a 112 individual defensive rating, which you'd love to see be better from a guy who's had Defensive Player of the Year nominations before. But he's guarding the best player on the other team every single game, and that's where he's expending a lot of his energy, which probably leads you to not having as high of an efficiency or usage rate on offense. So I'm talking about what the Blazers do, because the Rockets, like, they are a team that I hate to bet against, because every now and again last year they would just burn you, because it was almost like they were too ignorant to know that they shouldn't win the game, and they were just going blindly from 3. Kevin Porter or Jalen Green obviously just going off. That's what you're worried about. But like I said, with the way that the Blazers have paid a lot more attention to defense this season, and limiting, like I said, the 3-pointer percentage and the points in the paint, which they're at least top half in the league in both those things, which they were bottom 2 or 3 in both of them last year. So I feel much better about the way they're playing D enough to cover 6 points against one of, if not the worst team in the NBA this year.
Yeah, Jalen Jr., I like that, because Jalen Brunson is his father at this point.
Yeah,
but it is all Jalen Green for the Rockets, and if he's not cooking, they're going to fall behind real quick. He did have 2 nice games against the Portland tank lineup. Prior to that, his first 2 games against Portland were pretty ugly. Averaged 13, shot 35% from the floor, 30% from 3, and then a negative 27 total rating there. So I think they do know how to defend him. Chauncey Billups does have. I mean, it's not the hardest coaching assignment to say we got to stop Porter and Jalen Green here tonight. And then Alperen Şengün. He could just give his lunch money to Nurk at this point. Like, you trying all that cute stuff with the over the head passes. Nurk just is fresh off shutting down the 2-time MVP. So I mean, Portland's defense, I think, is where we lean here. That's why I think the over is pretty competitive number. I'm not really trying to go with it. I wouldn't be surprised at all, though, the way the Rockets play is if Portland puts up 125, maybe I would think about their team total, because I think they have enough offensive firepower to look great here even after losing their leader.
Yep, we're totally aligned and have been on Portland from the jump. I love the stars out, bets up for them. Similarly to why I was scared of taking that Pelly's game against Dallas, is like the Pelly's had players that could step up and would be getting more points and more stats if they were given the time without, guys like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson playing. This is Dame's team. I just told you about his 34% usage rate. That's what you want it to be. But Josh Hart, Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic, and even the way Winslow's playing this season, which is incredible, 102 individual defensive rating for Justice Winslow in 25 minutes a game, dude. So I'm like very proud of him because I've been waiting for him to be somewhat good. Shaedon Sharp as well. We've talked about him with a plus 11 net rating individually for him in 5 games and 16 and a half minutes. So there's a bunch of guys almost like waiting to just get their shine here. This is a wonderful stars out bets up bet at 5.5 against even if Jalen Green goes off. This is gonna be a team effort for the Blazers, I think, coming out strong. So don't let me down, Portland. That is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us, including checking out those player props 13 and 2 over the course of the last 3 days or so. So until we see you next, happy betting.